The Collapse video series is for entertainment purposes only. Do not commit acts of violence. In the morning, Americans and Canadians find that the electricity is out. They presume this is a temporary power disruption due to all of those riots they saw on the news the night before. They are sure the power will be back on in a few hours. What most people do not know is that dozens of large high-voltage transformers across the U.S. have been destroyed by rifle fire. 18 high-voltage transformer substations were attacked, each with several transformers. A large high-voltage transformer takes more than a year to build. There are hundreds of mobile transformers across the continent available to temporarily replace damaged fixed transformers until a new one can be built. But the mobile transformers can only stand in for medium and small transformers, not the big ones, for the simple reason that the large ones are literally too large to be mobile. Most of North America will be out of electricity for a year or longer. None of the attacks were in Canada, but it is on the same grid as the continental US. The gravity of the problem is unknown to the vast majority of the people who believe the electricity will be up and running again shortly. Cell phones are still working. Cell phone companies have backup generators for their cell towers in order to aid rescue and recovery efforts and family reunification after disasters. People see that they still have cell service and try to use the internet on their phones to get some information on the blackout. But while the phones have service, many of the servers that host information for the internet do not have backup generators. People have no idea how badly they are going to miss the ability to get information. There are videos on government and power company websites stating that they are working on restoring power and will have it back up shortly. This is a lie to keep people calm for the moment. It works. The vast majority of the population is blissfully unaware of how dire the situation is. People call their bosses to see if they have to go to work. They are happy to have an unexpected day off. Without electricity, nearly all schools, offices, and businesses are closed except for emergency services. Hospitals, police, and fire stations are open, but that's about it. They have backup generators. Emergency workers set off for work, taking extra care navigating the streets as all of the traffic lights are out. This is a busy day for them because they are still putting out fires from the riots the night before. The riots eventually fizzled out and the rioters who were not hurt or arrested went home, but there are some recovering in the hospital or sitting in a jail cell waiting for a bail hearing. Gas stations are closed. This is a much bigger problem than it seems to be. The large gasoline tanks at the gas stations are underground. The pumps that move the gasoline from the underground tanks into the cars run on electricity. There is gasoline, but the pumps aren't functioning. Without gasoline, people are trapped in the cities. Not only can't people get gas, they can't get cash. The banks are closed due to the power outage, and the automatic teller machines are down. No one can withdraw cash from their accounts. No electricity, no gas, no cash, no groceries, no information. We are astoundingly dependent on electricity. Without it, society as we know it ceases to function. Everyone still has water. Municipalities have water towers. Electric pumps move the water from underground to the water towers. The pumps have stopped, but the water towers were full before the pumps stopped. Electricity is not needed to move the water from the towers to the houses. The water pressure from gravity is enough. As long as there is still water in the tower, it will make its way into the houses without electricity. Some municipalities have backup generators for the water pumps, but most do not. In the past decade, the need for backup generators for water and sewer has been a topic of discussion in legislatures. But even where the city or township passes a law to require generators, they remain unpurchased when it is learned how much they cost, compared to how often they are needed. It is the cities and towns in hurricane-prone regions that are more likely to have backup generators. But even those that have them only have 2 to 3 days of fuel for the generators at most. Some people with natural gas still have the fuel coming into their homes, and some don't. Natural gas companies rely on electronic equipment to safely regulate the distribution of natural gas through the network of pipes. When the electricity stops, the gas shuts off for safety reasons. At home, most people are still able to use their laptops and handheld electronic devices as long as the batteries were fully charged when the blackout started. Over the course of the day, these devices one by one start running out of battery charge. Families want to entertain their children after the electronic entertainment ends and are concerned that the refrigerator is warming up. They set up the grill outside and have a cookout. Everyone has the same idea. Residential neighborhoods across the continent are filled with the smell of meat cooking on fire outside. The mood is festive. The calm in the general population is eerie. They have no idea that they will be fighting for their lives in just a few days. While the majority of the people in the US and Canada are confident that the electricity will be back on shortly, not everyone believes that. People who have been preparing for an emergency like this, known as preppers, start implementing the plans they've worked on for years. Prepper networks are abuzz with activity. Everyone knows this is it. This is what they've been talking about for years. Many quickly pack their cars and take their families to their bug-out location, a place they have prepared in advance to move their families to in just such an emergency. Bug-out locations are away from population centers and are stocked with food, water, weapons, and other supplies. The hyper-wealthy have known for a while that this was going to happen. In a way, they are also preppers, but their bug-out locations are more extravagant. The hyper-wealthy fly to properties in New Zealand and Hawaii. People like Peter Thiel and Bill Gates own properties in New Zealand, while the likes of Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Ellison have bug-out locations in Hawaii. So many hyper-wealthy Americans were purchasing luxury bunkers in New Zealand that in August of 2018, the New Zealand Parliament voted to restrict such purchases from foreigners. They have private jets that can fuel up, take off, and land in a widespread blackout. They had their private jets on standby during the riots and set out with their families the moment the grid came down. The government may be telling people that everything is fine, but government officials know it's not fine. The government knows what's happened. The military is put on red alert, lest some other country try to take advantage of the blackout, especially the one that conducted the attacks, whoever it was. Navy ships deployed around the world are called back home to guard the coasts. Governors are calling the White House and 24 Sussex to get information. They are told the same thing as the people. Everything is under control and electricity will be back on shortly. The governors call the CEOs of the electric companies who tell them the truth. Emergency meetings are held across the US and Canada by governors and within the federal government. Contingency plans for widespread blackouts do exist, but they are all inadequate for the current crisis. No one knows what to do. In the rest of the world, people are shocked to learn of the grid down in the United States and Canada. Countries close their stock markets to prevent a crash. Of the 7 countries with the largest gross domestic product in the developed world, known as the G7 countries, the United States and Canada are 2 of the 7. The 2 countries together account for over 15% of the world's gross domestic product, despite having less than 5% of the world's population. Heads of state across the world have emergency meetings. They know this blackout will be long-term and the global impact will be huge. Reporters start asking politicians how the Western blackout affects their country. Politicians assure the people that everything will be fine. But there is a general feeling of uneasiness and uncertainty throughout the world. After just one day, some countries are already feeling the impact of the Great Western Blackout. No money is wired to Honduras, El Salvador, or Guatemala. The money wired by legal and illegal immigrants in the United States to Guatemala is about 10% of their GDP. For Honduras and El Salvador, it's over 15%. The sudden loss of that money is a shock to their economies. Residents of those three countries are disappointed that they did not receive the money today, but they are confident they will get it tomorrow. They can go a day or two without the support of money from relatives in the U.S. In China, India, Indonesia, and elsewhere, factory workers showing up for work are told that the factories are temporarily closed. Shipments of goods to the U.S. and Canada are abruptly halted. The businesses have nowhere to send their goods. The Western European market is still open, but there are far more items already produced and awaiting sale than there is demand for now. There is no point in making more. Signs are posted on the factory doors telling workers to return on Monday. The business executives want more information before making long-term decisions. Stay tuned for scenes from next week's episode. For an ad-free version of these videos, go to BitChute or Brighteon, links in the description. Even with the ads, there is not enough YouTube ad revenue to support this show. Please consider subscribing on Subscribestar. Next week on The Collapse. People in the hotter parts of the United States are getting very hot. When the electricity stopped, the air conditioning stopped. The hospitals begin to see people in the emergency room reporting heat-related illness, such as heat exhaustion and heat stroke.